All right, I'm probably about to make YouTube a little upset because I do that from time to time because I'm going to be fair and say economists are divided on whether or not the US is in recession. Well, I, for one, pretty sure by all traditional measures, we've been in a recession for a while, but nobody wants to talk about that because we're trying to protect certain politicians at the moment. Let's just say it that way. So with this video, I'm going to take a very close look at some key industries that indicate whether or not we are in an economy that's already had a downturn or well past the edge, or we're actually in a pretty deep recession already. First and foremost, of course, is the housing market, which has been negatively impacted by the actions of the Fed. They have raised rates many times. They're going to raise them 2 or 3 more times. Maybe not as aggressively, but that is coming. And we're also going to take a look at the industries, specifically the tech industry, that is having a bunch of layoffs that is impacting people quite negatively across the board here in the United States. We need to look honestly at the future of our current economy, which is not as good as it was just a few short years ago, and what the future might hold. But before we get started with all of that, just a quick reminder to hit that like button below and to verify that you're subscribed to the channel. It's one of the few free things that are left in life, at least in this world that we are in right now, and it helps the channel immensely. So if you're down there, go ahead and look up and see that there's a bell up top. Make sure you've turned on your notifications as well. That way you don't miss a video, a live stream, or a short that gets into some of these topics that the mainstream media is not necessarily speaking to you, well, in a very direct manner anyway. So on we go. The US economy has been the subject of a lot of debate, as I said before. Some economists are arguing that we are clearly in a recession. It's already upon us. Others are defying traditional metrics, and they believe that the country is still growing, or at least the economy is anyway. And one thing is for sure here, key industries in the United States have already entered a recession. You can't argue that. This is going to have, or could have, some far-reaching implications as to whether or not it pushes us over the edge for the broader economy. My argument is, well, it doesn't need to push much harder. We're already there. But again, I'm going to allow room for, other people's arguments. So the first industry that might be dragging down, I should say, the U.S. economy is the housing market, which I mentioned right up front. The Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates to combat inflation, which was created because we were just printing money left and right and giving it away. And unfortunately, we're giving it away to other countries, which I still think is a real problem, but it's not subject to this video. Experts continue to say that this is going to be bad news for the housing industry because as interest rates rise, fewer and fewer people can afford what would be a very high house payment. The rising rates have led to mortgage rates, which in combination with already overly inflated high home prices have, dampened demand. In some markets, including Las Vegas, rumored to be between 70 and 85% of a decline in that would be an interest in the houses, not in the mortgage interest. But people are not wanting to buy houses in markets like that in a recession, according to even Fannie Mae's own deputy chief economist, Mark Pallam. So even the federal government's acknowledging this. They're pointing towards some pretty dramatic declines, for lack of a better way to put it, and in using even almost verbatim what Mark actually said. Home sales in recent months have not looked good, and Fannie Mae is actually projecting roughly 7 months to 24 months of decline, roughly 7% at least over that 24 months overall. Obviously, home applications have risen in recent weeks in some areas, as mortgage rates have sort of dipped here and there. But again, they're continuing to tick upwards, and they're likely to do it again here in the very near future. The Mortgage Bankers Association economist Joel Kahn says that home buying activity remains tepid. That's going to continue to stay that way, I'm afraid. The second industry that we're going to look at, of course, is the manufacturing sector. US consumers are fighting off inflation. Our dollar doesn't go as far, and it hasn't for quite some time. And the extraordinarily high levels of inflation, where prices reportedly, anecdotally, have doubled or tripled on some goods, have made it hard just to purchase basic staples, let alone make ends meet. You have dwindling savings, you have people overall spending less on goods. That actually is bad news for manufacturing. When you look at organizations which I think are corrupt, like Reuters, their markets analyst there is named John Kemp, and he says that the U.S. manufacturers probably entered a recession in the fourth quarter of last year, 2022. And I would say you're wrong. It was probably the second quarter of 2022. But hey, not to quibble, at least they're acknowledging there's a problem. The industry itself, it also has had its own slew of layoffs, letting qualified manufacturing personnel walk out the door with pink slips. And that's obviously been a real issue. Not a lot of people are going out and buying brand new refrigerators to refresh their kitchen. They're just going to sit on them. And as we've seen in the automobile markets, people aren't buying cars, even with, well, and especially because of the artificially increased prices. I mean, who's going to pay $85,000 for a truck? Nobody in their right mind right now. Moving on from that, of course, we come to the third industry that is the largest telltale sign, and of course, in a video that I've already released today, which is right there. And that, of course, is the tech industry. It's already well into a recession. And you don't have to look at the dramatic fall off of the price of market shares in the sector. Just look at how many people have hit the unemployment line, courtesy of that sector. And when it comes to layoffs, obviously the tech sector has led the way. You've got companies like Meta and Twitter and many others combining to lay off over 150,000 tech sector workers towards, well, during the course of 2022 alone, most of those coming towards the end of the year, and even more at the beginning of this year. The tech entities themselves have actually been struggling, driven by the same factors that everybody else has been driven downward by, which is the increase in interest rates, and many other factors. Specifically, when it comes to tech and media, you're seeing the slowing of advertising demand, which is really putting the thumb screws to bigger corps, especially in media. Some analysts have actually even come forward and declared that we are actually in a tech recession, and saying that it's been upon us for quite some period of time. Of course, this is always something that happens when we go through a rough economy. The technology sector does usually take a pretty decent hit. Now, many would argue that some of the jobs that are being lost were make work jobs, or not even truly full-time positions. They were just getting bodies in place to continually ramp up as they saw nothing but positivity in the future. All of those things are probably true. So despite the challenges that are facing all of these industries, the U.S. economy is still somewhat resilient, although, again, I would say outside of recent GDP and retail's figures pointing towards a slowdown, they've still been a little bit positive and indicating just a small amount of growth here and there, but not across the board and not overwhelmingly. We still could be facing a severe recession. Again, I believe we're already in one, and I think a lot of economists are just trying to will through words in avoidance of something that's very deep indeed in 2023. The labor market, of course, is okay if you look at it superficially by looking at jobless claims and things like that, which is disingenuous, to put it nicely or kindly, because a lot of people that have left the workforce are never going to return. They just retired early and took advantage of what savings or 401k or investments that they had, and are fine living out their lives without meaningful employment going forward. You're seeing job growth in areas where we had lost jobs because of the pandemic. And for some reason, those are being characterized as gains. And I'm not sure that that's, again, being entirely honest. Again, they'll always point towards the unemployment rate, which is the lowest since 1969. But once again, I'm going to point back to the previous statement that I made. It's because people have left the job market never to return, not because they're seeking benefit. Ultimately, the question is whether or not the U.S. is headed deeper into a recession. That's going to be hotly debated for months going forward, even though we're in many areas and deeply in one, and in other areas maybe avoiding it. Overall, I think economists are going to figure it out sooner rather than later. I think we're having what some people are describing a rolling recession, and that's where different elements of the economy take damage and then they stand pat, and then another area takes over. So regardless what happens or how they describe it, we are in the midst of some very tough challenges. Those three key industries are going to continue to suffer. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen for the next few months. And no limited growth or individual sector growth is going to stymie or abate that. The three sectors that we mentioned are the indicators to pay attention to in the months going forward to decide when we are back on the right path. I would imagine that that could be 2 years away. What great news, huh? Anyway, during that time and all other times, I encourage you to take care of yourself. Take care of others. Wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.